Another way I like to use technologies in the fact that I say 99% of my students have a tablet, smartphone, or laptop with them, is to move them away from searching everything on Google and Wikipedia. So when I ask my students to find the current unemployment rate, I want them to go to the source. Okay? I want them to not rely on everything on Wikipedia. So one way that you would do that is to convey a website in which they can find the actual data. Now, here's the problem. If I want to find the unemployment rate, and you've seen this a lot of times in presentations where there'll be this really long URL, and if you try to write that down, you'll miss a letter, or the slide won't be long enough that it won't be up long enough for everyone to get that URL. So there has to be techniques that you can use to either shorten the URL, which there are, and I'll show that in a minute, or possibly use a QR code, which stands for quick response. So here's another activity I want you to try. If you happen to have a QR reader, you can scan that from anywhere in this room, and that will pull up the rest of today's agenda at EconEd. So again, whether you're teaching online or whether you're teaching in a live classroom, this is a unique way to convey websites, because when students scan that, when you scan this code, that website is saved on your phone as well. So it eliminates the need to be writing down these long URL addresses. QR codes are everywhere now. Okay? It's hard to realize that it's just sort of expanded. You see them at the bottom of shoes. This is at the Bradley Airport in Hartford. As you're waiting to pick up friends and family, you can scan a QR code which shows you the flight arrival information. You see what time they're coming in. Looks like a supermarket. This is actually a virtual supermarket in a subway station in Korea. So passengers can scan the items they want using QR codes, and they're delivered to your house that evening. So incredible. So going back to my original idea, you want your students to look for data in their original source. So one way that I like to do it, and I don't do this throughout my class, but maybe once or twice in a typical class, but what is the current unemployment rate in the US? Well, here's two sources that you can find it: the Fed of St. Louis and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If you scan from one side or the other, you can get those websites right on your phone. I'm running out of time at some point, but I want to touch a little bit more on the importance of visuals, because students in this generation, they've seen amazing visuals in almost everything that they do. So why not also in the classroom? Sometimes as I'm going down a typical conference at the AEAs or the SEAs, and I'm looking at these presentations that are being presented, and I'm seeing presenters trying to cram as much information onto a slide as they can. They would do something sometimes like this. Very, very difficult to read. And as an instructor, if you are talking over that slide, that's a serious overload of information from students reading, the instructor talking over it. It's very difficult to comprehend. The same is true for when we teach. This is a slide that talks about the 4 factors of production. Okay? The definition and the 4 factors. So much text again. Why not have an improvement by reducing the words? Okay? Making it so that there's less to read and the students can then focus more on you talking about each concept. Why not go one step further? The definitions are in the book. They're not very difficult concepts, so why not use pictures? Okay? And have the students focus on the picture, you talk about the concept, they read about it in the book. Then, there's a lot of unused white space around the pictures. Why not expand it and make it more visually appealing? Okay? So there's different ways in which you can improve the visual look of the slides, which ultimately help students comprehend and retain information that you teach. And part of the reason why many people are hesitant to try new techniques in terms of their slides is because we are often provided with templates. Okay? This is a slide, a practice question, that looks very good. It has a title, a picture, and a question. It was created using the typical PowerPoint template that's provided to you. You just enter the title, text, and picture. But with a little bit of work, you can change it into a much more visually appealing picture, a slide. Okay, that takes up all the space and makes it a lot more visually appealing. And if you're thinking that, oh, I don't have hours and hours to create these dynamic slides, well, let me show you how quick it can be. So if you take a slide like this and just move it down, stretch the corner all the way to the end, delete that, and change the text to white, and move it into an area where you can easily see it. In a matter of seconds, you can create a slide that looks from a templated slide into one that's very visually appealing. In seconds, it's that quick. Just learning these few techniques. Okay? Another technique I like to use is the use of animation, because animation allows you to replicate the chalk experience or the whiteboard experience on a slide. So you're not seeing a finished graph like you would in a book. You're seeing step by step how you shift curves and change in equilibrium. And so if you're teaching an online course, this, again, helps the student retain and understand information because they're seeing the graph as it's being drawn. Okay, so these are animation techniques that are all standard, whether you're using Prezi, whether you're using PowerPoint. These are relatively easy to learn, and once you learn them, they're very fun to use. I want to conclude my talk today by making an argument about teaching to today's new generation of students and how they grew up with all of these technologies and the power of networks. So I'm going to make an argument of why not include a class or two, and many of you may have already do this, on the importance of networks. Because of the way that networks now influence the way consumers make decisions, we rely on Yelp. Most of you had used Yelp to find out where you're going to eat last night. We rely on Amazon's reviews to find out what products are the best. And businesses rely on these on this feedback as well. And so that's just one example of how networks can influence everyone's lives. So it's become a very core concept, even at the principles level. And one of the important concepts within network goods is the network effect. The fact that products become more valuable as more people use them. Okay? So email, completely worthless if no one else has it. FaceTime, I never really used FaceTime until my siblings had it, and then my nephews wanted to chat with uncle, and they're like, let's FaceTime. I was like, what's FaceTime? It's like, download it on your iPad. And then so I discovered FaceTime. And as I became part of it, and as Grandma and Grandpa became part of it, the value of the product keeps rising. And that's something that's unique to networks, and it's a topic that students can understand. And it takes all the principles that we teach throughout the semester and applies it in a very unique way. The network demand curve has an upward sloping portion and a downward sloping portion. So the idea is that as a network expands from one capacity to another capacity, the value of the product also increases. So the demand curve is increasing as well. So essentially, the yellow dots are a collection of short-run equilibriums that's going up until diminishing return sets in, and then you have the typical demand curve on the right. So the unique aspect about teaching the network demand curve is there's this initial portion of the demand curve that's considered built up by core users of products. Okay? Core users versus casual users. So you might think, what are core users? These are core users. These are those that are excited about new products. They become even more excited when their friends have it, and the willingness to pay increases as more people subscribe to a product or more people buy a product. As more consumers listen to a particular song, it becomes more popular, so the value of it increases. So there's many examples of an upward sloping network demand curve that students will understand. Okay? Casual users. These are the users, these are the consumers that wait until a product matures. Okay? Once everyone in the family has an iPad, and they're all looking at you like you're from another planet, then you're like, okay, the price is coming down, I will buy an iPad as well. So you are part of the downward sloping demand curve, which the price comes down as more quantity is made available. Okay. The sort of the history of really the importance of network effects and network goods, I would argue that it really started with Napster. This was a turning point in about the year 2000 that really changed the way people thought about the power of networks. Because at the time, the idea of file sharing music and stealing music from the music artists, it was a very big issue. Many music artists, Metallica and others, were completely outraged that this is going to destroy the music industry. And many lawsuits and so on and so forth were filed against these firms. But ultimately, there was a small but growing voice out there saying that, hey, wait a minute. Although these files are being shared for free, it's also increasing the popularity of these products. And so we've seen a dramatic shift over the last decade from those that were anti-file sharing to now businesses realizing the power of networks. And one example, and I'll close with this, is Justin Timberlake. Last year, Justin Timberlake, when he was creating his album, The 2020 Experience, he did something that no other artists have done in the past. He released every single song on his album before the release date for free on Spotify, on RDO, on all of these music sites, allowing everyone in the world to listen to his music for free. And his critics thought that, oh, that's sort of suicidal, give all your music away for free, and then when the album's released, you don't sell anything. Well, guess how he did last April when this album was released? He sold 1 million paid downloads of his entire album in the first week. He had the #1 album selling for a few weeks. 2 of his songs are #1 Billboard Top 100 hits, and he's probably going to win a Grammy. That is the power of networks, in which by giving out his music, he was able to create a huge following that ended up resulting in a very profitable outcome. So again, this is the reason why I love concluding each of my principles courses, even my macro course. When I teach macro, I always like to conclude the course with a class on networks, because it's a great way that you can bring in supply and demand, you can bring in externalities. There's so many concepts you can bring together to a topic that students are fascinated about. This is the way they live. And it's no better way to sort of leave a course than saying, oh wow, I took principles of economics and I learned about Facebook. I learned about all these interesting things I already know, but learning about the economics behind them. Okay, so just something for you to consider as you plan your future principles courses.